Hey guys, this is Alex Serpentine. I'm back again with another video series surrounding the Michael teachings mainly, but there's a couple other systems that I'm involving in this series. Today I'm going to be doing the opening video for the stages of conscious evolution. And so the stages of conscious evolution are represented through three different systems that I'm going to talk about. It's the Michael teachings, which is in that system is called the Soul Ages. And then in Aleister Crowley's Thelema religion, he has something called the Aeons. And then there's a system called spiral dynamics that has stages called vMEMEs. So these are all interrelated. And so I'm going to talk about each of these and how they're related and how it creates a greater picture about our stages of conscious evolution. So let's get into it. So this is the overall chart showing all the different stages of conscious evolution. We have, like I said, the Aeons on the left from Thelema, Aleister Crowley's religion. And then we have the Soul Ages from the Michael teachings. Michael teachings is a system that I've been talking a lot about on my channel. And then we've got the spiral dynamics vMEMEs. So what you can see here is they have correlations going from the left to the right. All the ones that are lined up from left to right are basically the same stages talked about in different systems. So we've got, I'll talk about the Aeons first, and then the Soul Ages and the vMEMEs, how they all fit together. I'll just name them real quick on this slide, and then I'll talk about each of the stages and how it evolves through the following slides that have images. So first we have the Aeon of Isis, which is called the Mother stage, the Mother Aeon. It's feminine, instinctual, nature connected. This corresponds with the Soul Age of Infant, which is focused on survival, instinctual, learning basics, and existing. And this corresponds in the spiral dynamic system with the vMEMEs beige, purple, and red. Beige is survivalistic, instinctual, habitual. Purple is magical, tribal, mystical, ritualistic. The red vMEME is impulsive, dominating, aggressive, and power focused. So that's everything under the first Aeon. Then there's the Aeon of Osiris, which is moving away from the mother focus, like the great mother, like planet Earth, and nature, and that kind of focus of things. And it goes into the father focus, which is masculine, structured, and rational. This corresponds with the baby soul age and the young soul age from Michael teachings. Baby soul age is structure, is traditional, rule-bound, and order-seeking. And the baby soul age aligns with the blue vMEME, which is purposeful, controlled, focused on moral order, and is typically fundamentalist in its views. Then we have the young soul age, which is also part of this Aeon of Osiris. Achievement, focused, ambitious, success-driven, and that corresponds with the orange vMEME, which is achievist, competitive, strategic, and rational. Then we have the Aeon of Horus, which is an integration of both the masculine and the feminine. It's balanced and creative. And this corresponds with the mature soul age and the old soul age. Mature soul age is relationship focused, emotional, deep, and introspective, which corresponds with the vMEME green, which is humanitarian, empathetic, and equality focused. Then we have the old soul age, which is focused on context. They're wise, detached, and they focus on guiding others. And this corresponds with the yellow vMEME, which is integrative systems thinking, adaptive, and flexible. Then there's a stage that happens after the main Aeons that Aleister Crowley talks about. I call this stage Ak, which means spirit. So this stage is beyond the reincarnational cycle. All this stuff is part of our reincarnational cycle and stages that we go through. So, but except for when you get to Ak, that's after our reincarnational cycle is done, and we're learning lessons beyond the physical domain, and we're combining with our soul family and sharing all of our knowledge, information, energy, and experience. So Aka's spirit is transcendent, universal consciousness. This aligns with the Soul Age's transcendental, which is focused on synthesis, social revolution, when someone incarnates um, to make big changes in the world, and it's integrating. And this corresponds with the turquoise vMEME in spiral dynamics, which is holistic, interconnected, intuitive, and compassionate. Then the last overall stage in the Soul Ages is infinite, which is tied to being one with the Tao, just the field of being. It's when someone incarnates to affect the world, it's a spiritual revolution that happens, and it's unifying in its approach. And this corresponds with the choral vMEME, which is not really known too well in spiral dynamics because we don't have too many examples of it, so we don't really know too much about it. But when I go and talk about this in the other videos about each of the Soul Ages, we'll get some more context about what the choral vMEME means. But I put here it's cosmic, transcendent, transformative, and masterful. So that's the overall chart showing how all these things are combined together. And so I'm going to do a series of videos focusing on the Soul Ages: infant, baby, young, mature, old, transcendental, and infinite, and going into how this relates to the Aeons and the vMEMEs, and getting into more of the details and nitty-gritty parts of what that all means. And so I also have a test you can take to figure out what Soul Age you're in. So for that, I have the baby, young, mature, and old Soul Ages, like statements from those Soul Ages that identify with those Soul Ages, so you can figure out which one of those you're in. You're probably not going to be in the infant Soul Age because that's a more primal, like basic stage that as we're now part of society, we're not going to be in the infant Soul Age. So it's just baby, young, mature, and old. So you can take that test. It's in my description of this video, and will be in the description of all the videos for my Soul Age series. So now I'm going to go into I'm going to show some images and talk more in detail about the whole flow and how this happens through the Aeons, and then talking about the Soul Ages and vMEMEs and how that relates, just as an overarching thing to kind of give you an overall picture of how this works. So this image right here represents the Aeon of Isis, which is the mother Aeon. So it's really focused on being one with nature and learning the basic lessons of living as a human, where you're getting in touch with your body and your instinctual aspects, and learning all about survival. So at first it's really basic, like food, shelter, clothing, sex, basic stuff that you're learning about the body and how to survive. So this is represented like during the stage that we kind of ruled by Mother Nature, and we're one with nature. So this is when people are like in tribal societies, very basic societies, and they're out in the tribes, like out in nature. This is before any kind of societal level experience in your cycle. So this is when you all this happens through reincarnational stages. That's how we progress through these stages. It's through reincarnation. So this is where everybody starts off. We're all starting off just one with nature, learning about instinct, learning about survival. And so this is like when we had more of like the nature-based religions. There's more of a polytheistic kind of view of things during this time. So we kind of see like nature representing all the different gods that we've formulated in our experience, which are now known to us as, you could approach as archetypes. But we have like an ocean god, a thunder god, all these different gods. And there's a kind of like during this stage we have like magical thinking. So it's kind of like it really fits perfectly with understanding things through as we're growing up, from being an infant to a baby to being a child and then a teenager, an adult. We actually go through these stages uh, of conscious experience. So first, you're with the mother. The mother is taking care of you and all your needs, of feeding you, cleaning you, holding you, all the nurturing aspects, and that's kind of where we start off on the conscious level in our process. And then you kind of step into, so that's like the beige vMEME. Um, this is the infant soul age in Michael teachings, but the beige vMEME is the very first one where you're just dealing with your basic needs for survival. And then you graduate into the purple vMEME, which is more focused with your tribe and being connected to a greater tribal collective connection. And during that stage, there's a lot of like magical thinking. You can imagine, like, think about like when kids have like imaginary friends, or they're very creative and imaginative in in the way that they look at things. It's a very magical stage of being. So that's the purple vMEME, and then you go into the red vMEME, which is kind of like the terrible twos. It's basically that stage where it's like the final stage of the mother age, of the mother Aeon of Isis, is the red vMEME. And that's where you're really in touch with your instincts. It's kind of like, from Freud, how he talks about the id. It's like you're dominated by your id basically during that stage. Is basically what it's like. So it's very power focused. This is like this stage when basically people who are in the red vMEME in the tribal settings, they would be the leaders, and they would be the ones that everybody is kind of fearing because they have all the power. So it's very instinctual and power driven during that stage, impulsive and dominating. So that's like the final stage of the Aeon of Isis, which is the red vMEME from Spiral Dynamics. So you can kind of think of that as when you're starting to distance from mother and saying, "Oh, look, I learned, I got what I needed from being connected with the mother, and now I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet and assert myself and my power and be in touch with my power." So it's kind of like when the baby gets old enough, so is walking and starting to like play with its own power and its instincts and its desires and expressing itself. So that's basically the whole process that we go through in terms of our conscious evolution during the Aeon of Isis. So that's the mother stage. So that's all we can think of that as the feminine, where the feminine side is instinct, it's the body. It's also tied to the unconscious. So all these stages you could think of are more unconscious. They don't have more developed kind of more conscious experiences where there's complicated thought and rationality and all that comes later. So that's the Aeon of Isis. So after that, you graduate into the Aeon of Osiris, which is the father age. So it's basically when the child is old enough and is looking up to the father and saying, "I wonder what father's all about. Like what is he all about? What's his focus? What does he have to teach me?" And so this is the stage where at first, this is the baby soul age I'm talking about, and also the blue vMEME. Those stages are about structure and order and authority. And so you're kind of looking up to some kind of authority figure. So that's kind of like the father, and this is when we started graduating into a new level of consciousness where we felt like we needed to control our desires and our impulses, because we can't just be impulsive all the time, because you can't really build more advanced societies when you're just going around like killing people or like raping and all that kind of stuff. If that was like the way you're everybody's going about things, you wouldn't be able to like develop a respectable society. So basically, it's like the stage where the father is saying, "Hey, you need to control yourself. You need to, follow these rules, follow this structure that I've got given to you, and we got to build a bigger society and advance ourselves." So it's the baby soul age and the blue vMEME is when you're in the order structure, following rules, um, and is the beginning of when you're building bigger societies because everybody has to follow the rules to get along, and so you can build society. So that's the first stage of that when you're looking up to the Father. That's when like when we have like the Abrahamic religions where it's all focused on God the Father. You notice that we don't have too many religions that are focused on the mother because the mother stage was a more primary, like primal, basic stage before we graduate to the Father. So that's why God is the Father. It's because of this stage where we have to control ourselves and develop ourselves and start adopting like rational thinking and stuff like that. So yeah, first you're in the baby soul age or the blue vMEME. They're basically the same thing, which is all that stuff with the structure, and then you graduate into the next stage, which is the young soul age and the orange vMEME, which is basically much more rational. It's and focused on achievement and like how far can I push myself in the external world and building using the structures that I built and the control I've had over myself. How can I advance myself as much as possible in the external world to build more an advanced society and test the limits of what I've learned from Father. So Father gave the initial structure, and then when you graduate into the young soul age, this is when the Father is kind of forgotten, or not completely forgotten, but like it's kind of like you can kind of think of it as when the atheistic view becomes more prominent. That's like young soul age, basically, because they're starting to say, "Hey, I don't need Father. Father isn't like he's not relevant anymore." So let us say Father doesn't exist. But so basically, how the Father came into the picture at first was as like a intuitive inner voice that was compelling. It's like the conscience, and that was what was propelling people in the earlier stages to develop society, build structure, and all that. And so that's how we've had the religions, the Abrahamic religions, Western religions. That's where that came from. But as we go into the young soul age and the orange vMEME, it's saying like, I've got this all on my own. I'm old enough. It's like that's the young soul age. It's like I'm independent. I could do this all on my own. Let's see how awesome I can be and how I can use my masculine energy, everything I learned from Dad, all the masculine energy that's outward moving and focusing on building stuff and advancing society. So that's kind of like it's really represented, especially in like the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment and those kinds of movements that happened. So, it's very scientific also on that stage, advancing technology, and but it really is disconnected from the mother at this point because mother was a much earlier stage. So the the beginning of stepping into the next stage is starting to reconnect with the mother again and the feminine. So you'll notice that there's people who are very rational, focused on external achievement and discipline and order and scientific thinking. That's like this stage that I'm talking about. That's under the Aeon of Osiris, the father stage. So that's this stage, and I'm going to talk about the next one now. This is actually the young soul stage, the orange vMEME. That's where we're currently at. We're currently in the Aeon of Osiris, but we're moving into the next stage, which I'll show you now. This is the Aeon of Horus, which is the child or hero stage. So this is when the child is mature enough where they're able to be independent, but they're starting to reconnect with the feminine side, which is emotions, relationships, intuition, creativity, the unconscious, getting more in touch with their instincts again, recovering and healing everything from that stage where you're really disciplining yourself and structuring yourself and suppressing your primal desires and instincts. So this is actually what we're moving into now. And this is what Aleister Crowley taught about, was the Aeon of Horus. This is where we're as a society on the whole planet, we're starting to move into this next stage, which in the Michael teachings is called the mature soul age. And in spiral dynamics, it's called the green vMEME. So one example of this, like from the green vMEME, is like the hippie movement in like the 60s. That's basically a representation of this mature soul age stage, the Aeon of Horus starting to come about. And so at the beginning of this stage, there's a lot of difficulties because everything's starting to go focused internally instead of being so externally oriented and pushing to achieve and push the extents of your success orientation and building society using rational thinking. Now it's going inward and going very deep, going into the emotional inner landscape. So this is, like if you think about in the U.S., we're very young soul. It's still the Aeon of Osiris, but there's a good section of the population that is moving, that is already in mature soul age. And so this was actually talked about in this book called The Cultural Creatives. And they were saying that there's like, I think it was like 150 million, or maybe it was 50 million. 50 million people in the US are in this cultural creative stage. So yeah, it's dealing more with being connected to community, to emotion, to relationships, creativity. So the arts become really important. And there's also a reconnection to nature, because what was happening during the Aeon of Osiris is that we were basically asserting ourselves over nature, dominating over nature, and saying that we have the power, we're independent from nature. And so that's kind of why we lost the connection to the Aeon of Isis, which was all connected to nature. This stage, Aeon of Horus, is where we're reconnecting with nature and merging what we learned from the Aeon of Osiris and the rational masculine energy, and we're balancing that with the feminine again. So it's really important to understand that this is the stage that we're moving into. There's a lot of people that are at that stage now. If you're watching this video, you're probably in the mature soul age from the Michael teachings, or resonating with the green vMEME. So that's the first stage of the Aeon of Horus, is really getting in touch with the inner world, going very deep, focusing on relationships and emotions, sorting all that out. It's actually really difficult because you have to reconnect with your primal energies, and this is where things like really difficult patterns are happening, like what we're calling mental illness, where people have like bipolar manic episodes, or schizophrenia, or if they're like dealing with depression and like suicidal ideation and drug addiction, yeah, all that stuff. That's like really big on the mature soul age stage, because it's really difficult to go from an outward thrusting focus to turning inwards. So at that first stage of the Aeon of Horus, the mature soul age, the green vMEME, there's a lot of emotional complexity and learning how to navigate this new inner world and reintegrating with your primal instincts and desires in a way that's balanced, where you have connection to your intuition and your creativity and all that. So that stage of the mature soul age is the most focused on the arts and communicating, finding out about who we really are on a deeper level, exploring identity. So and it's really intense. So that's the first stage of the Aeon of Horus. And then what you graduate into after that is the final stage of the reincarnation cycle, which is the old soul age in Michael teachings, and is also known in the spiral dynamics as the yellow vMEME. So during that stage, you're still more focused on the inner world, but you don't go as deep. It's not like you go deep. Instead, you kind of step back and you get more detached, and you're starting to develop a greater context and understanding about your everything you've learned in this whole process, all the lessons you've learned. It's more intellectual overall, but it still has that creative flair and craveability, but it's more stepping back, detaching, because this stage is where you're starting to let go of the reincarnational cycle and the intensity of the experience of being human. So it's the last stage of the reincarnational cycle. And they're more, during that stage, they're more live and let live. They're more respective of everybody else's approaches to life, because they're starting to understand that everybody's coming from different stages of conscious evolution. Like this is why in the yellow vMEME, which is aligns with the old soul age, it's systems thinking, because they're identifying that there are these stages that we go through, and so people are at different levels of development, and they're having different lessons along the way. So it's one of the primary times where you're recognizing that everybody's having their own experience. They're at a certain level of development, and they're learning certain lessons at a certain time. So they're more like laid back. They're respective of everybody else's approach to life, and don't really make a big deal over what other people are doing, which is really different from like the baby soul age, where you feel like everybody has to follow the rules, and you feel weird if everybody's not following the rules, like what dad has to say about what you need to do. That's during that stage is very different. But as you go into the old soul age, after all these different soul ages, it's more laid back and carefree and respective of everybody else's approach. And so also during that phase, that stage, they have a harder time being motivated to go out in the world and do big things. So like during the mature soul age, there's still an outward thrust in some way, even though it's more connected to the inner world. They have to spend more time getting in touch with themselves on the inner level. But during the old soul age, they're not as motivated, because they're starting to like wind down from their whole reincarnation cycle, and start to eventually cycle off, where they're no longer engaging with the physical world anymore. And then the lessons become uh, connecting with their greater soul families and stuff like that. So that's the next stage, which is what I'm calling Akh, or spirit, which isn't something that Aleister Crowley originally talked about, because he was just basically talking about Aeon of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, which are all the stages that we go through in the reincarnational cycle. But there is some stages that we go through that is beyond the reincarnational cycle, but we still have to go through these final stages. And so what we have on this stage is we're starting to move onto the higher planes, and then move back into complete oneness with the Tao, with the field of being, with God overall. So they use the word the Tao to represent God or being, where everything is one. At first, you go through this stage called the Transcendental Soul Age, and there's a little bit of knowledge about the stage through the spiral dynamics, and they call this stage turquoise. And there's a certain amount of identification or knowing about what is going on this stage, but it's actually kind of graduated from the physical reincarnational stage. And so this is like a stage where as an individual, you're on the higher planes, you're on the causal plane, which is the plane above the the astral plane, which is where we go after we die. We move on to the causal plane, which is where we start to reunite with our soul family, which is called an entity in the Michael teachings. It's a group of 1,000 souls, which are who we chose to incarnate with. It's our soul family on for our whole cycle on Earth. We start to share all of our experiences that we've had through our whole reincarnation cycle. And so you become more of a cohesive unit, sharing all your energies, experiences, emotions, everything. So you become this one more united being, overall being. So you're not just this one individual soul, you're actually in a group of like 1,000 souls at that point. But there's something interesting that happens during the stage is that sometimes this united entity of 1,000 souls will make itself known through a walk-in, which is basically where they displace an incarnated soul, somebody who's at the old soul stage, and who they say that it happens with priests. So if you know the Michael teachings and the roles, you can watch videos about that I have on my channel. But the priest is the one that's focused on the higher inspiration side of things, through people's higher development. It's more of a spiritual kind of thing, but basically the priests will be involved in mass social change, social revolution. And an example of this is Gandhi. It's Mahatma Gandhi. So what Gandhi did is he through the approach of nonviolence went through there was a movement that he, like a reform movement that he went through in India. And he was able to do that because he actually had support of a whole entity, which is on the transcendental soul age stage where they're reunited. And so they actually did a walk-in. So they displaced his soul at the last part of his life. I think it's like 3 months or so that happens, because you can't like have all that energy all the time in a physical body, because it's too much. It's overwhelming. So it might be 3 years actually. I don't remember exactly what the phase is, because I know for the next stage it's like 1 month or something. But anyway, that's what they say in the Michael teachings is what happened is Gandhi was supported by an entity that helped facilitate this social revolution. So that's the transcendental soul age, or the turquoise vMEME, where everything, you basically feel united with everyone. If a soul or the entity incarnated, their perspective would be very different, where they feel one with everybody and connected to everybody. So it's kind of a more advanced stage beyond what we experience in our reincarnational cycle. So there's actually one more stage, the final stage after that, during this ox stage, this spirit stage, which is the infinite soul age, and which I'm identifying as correlating with the coral vMEME in spiral dynamics, the very final stage. And this is a stage where you're still merging with an even greater soul family. It's what it's called the cadre, and it's happening on the even higher planes, called the mental, Buddhic, and messianic. And so the cadre is a group of 7 entities. So it's about 7,000 souls. So once you're fusing with them on the highest planes, you're starting to become completely one with the Tao, back to oneness. And so what will happen during very rare moments in history, this cadre will displace king soul, an old soul level king, and to facilitate a grand spiritual revolution. And so this happens very rarely. And this is what happened, what they say in the Michael teachings is what happened with Jesus. And this is what happened during, maybe it was the 3 months. I have to like double check this, but it might have been 3 months or the last month of his life where, you know, he was crucified, all that happened. This could, because there's so much energy and power coming from this cadre, this group of 7,000 souls that displaced Jesus in his body. This is maybe what made it possible for him to be resurrected, possibly. So, um, when you're looking at it from that vantage point, that this is like a super powerful soul connection, so much more is possible in the physical when you have that kind of power behind you. So maybe the resurrection actually did happen, um, through this cadre that displaced Jesus, and Jesus was a king, so he was an uh, old soul age king, and kings are the most exalted of the roles. So they deal with affecting. They're the biggest focus on leadership. So that was so Jesus's life. That was his last life in his whole reincarnational cycle, his last old soul age life. And so what happened through him is a big spiritual revolution, or at least initiated that, which started a whole religion and a whole movement, obviously. And so the reason that happened was, they said, was to help facilitate the movement from the baby soul age focus to the young soul age. So that's why that's why this walk-in happened, was to help us move into the young soul age, which is where we're at right now. And this might happen again as we move into the mature soul age more firmly. So this also happened with a few other souls. I think it was Buddha. Buddha had the same walk-in experience, and then also Lao Tzu and Krishna. They're all apparently had the same walk-in experience. So yeah, that's the final stage before you're completely merged with the Tao again. So then that's a whole cycle. You go through all these stages that I talked about, from basic survival to building structure and rationality to connecting with emotion and creativity, and then starting to detach and live and let live, and then you start combining with your greater soul families and fusing all your experiences and emotions and energies with the greater soul family, so you become united with the whole again. And so what happens is we go through all these stages over and over and over. So each one is called a cycle. So we do this over and over for forever, basically. And this is the kind of the role that we chose as people to participate, as individual souls, to participate in our evolution as being incarnating in the physical universe. We incarnate in the physical universe, and then we move to the higher planes until we're one again, and we take a break. You know, we're just being united with the field of being. So that's it. That's the all the stages of conscious evolution that we go through in our whole cycle. That's all, every one of the stages. The Aeon of Isis, Aeon, which is the mother stage, Aeon of Osiris, which is the father stage, Aeon of Horus, which is the child or hero stage, and then Akh, which is the merging with your soul families. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna do a video for each of the soul ages from the Michael teachings, talking about how this relates to each of the Aeons and the vMEMEs, just a little bit more detail, and so you can focus on that. If you can take my test, that'll be in the description of this video and all my soul age videos, to figure out which soul age you're in, and then you can watch any one of my soul age videos to get a little bit more information on what's going on. But yeah, this is a pretty good overview of everything. It's a 40-minute video. I didn't realize it was gonna be that long, but I hope that really explains a lot for you who want an overview about this whole process. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this content, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next videos. Peace.